know you a little bit more, what drives you, what your passions are, and what you're involved in.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show as the first guest. It's been really nice. Yeah, just thinking about the theme, life in contradiction. So I'm really keen to have a conversation with you guys about it from my perspective. Yeah, first of all, I really like to thank you guys. Also, again, I really want to acknowledge the space that we're all holding. We're all on Aboriginal land, and I just want to hold that in mind for the whole duration of the show. So I don't know. I think I would describe myself as a multidisciplinary artist. I traditionally, I've always been a painter, but recently I've been getting into performance art a lot more, specifically improv and storytelling. And also, I'm a part of the Way Over There collective, which is a collective of young curators and artists and community developers and passionate community members from the southeast of Melbourne, or NAM. We're all our lives all just linked up at the right time. We formed a group of, we're all very passionate young people, and we are building and curating programs and safe spaces for other Black and Brown people in the southeast specifically, or surrounding. That's one thing I'm really passionate about. And then I also have I've been creating some natural products. Me and my partner, we have a natural product business, so that's something I'm really passionate about. What you put on your skin, or what you put on your body, it really affects everything around you. I do have a daughter, so I think that's become really important to me ever since I had her, just to be really conscious of what I'm putting into my own body and what I'm putting into the world. And recently, me and a friend partnered on a gardening business. So all of the things that I'm really passionate about are just kind of sprouting up here and there. And I think it's all kind of coming together. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. And I guess in terms of work, I have always, in the recent years, have worked at Bunjil Place, which is the local arts centre / council owned building in the southeast. It's been that's pretty much me in a bubble.
So, Sol, my question too is, how has your relationship with the local council influenced how you work in your collective way over there?
Yeah. I mean, it's been really interesting. Like, I've always lived in this area, obviously, and I think I started my journey in this type of work volunteering for like a local youth centre. And even going back before that, I used to go to the local community centres and go to art classes and, be a part of their, little programs and stuff that were running when I was younger there. And then I started volunteering and eventually really just wanted to get a job, at Bunjil Place, because it is one of the only spaces that really represent what I'm passionate about. So once I got a job there, I just really enjoyed doing different things I think having conversations with people about art, for one, because in this area, it's really rare to find someone who has the same level of passion or cares as much as you do about art, or about the meaning of it, or how it makes you feel, or it's just like something that hasn't really been very prominent for a lot of people. So I really enjoyed that part of working in that space, as well as like sometimes there's programs that run alongside exhibitions or that sort of thing, where you get to work with younger people and families. And I really love that. I love working with people. And I guess since I've always had a passion for the area and that sort of work, I think it's really driven me to go forth and just kind of forge the journey in a stronger way for me and for the collective, I think we all have the same thing in mind. We just I think it's really powerful to come together and put all of our passions together, being youth and art and mental health, which is connected to art, and well-being, and just I think the thing that ties us all together is we all have the collective narrative of always kind of feeling like a little bit on the outside, or a little bit like our background and our opportunities are skewed a little bit. And yeah, it's confusing. But I guess like the working with the council and volunteering and in their spaces and stuff has really forced me to want to do something in the area.
Do you have any like driving influences that are really driving the passion for the local area and all the things that you're involved in? Like anything that sort of sticks out as like a key driving moment or influence or anything like that?
Yeah, I do feel like the narrative of the collective narrative of young Black and brown people in this area is that we all have, this background of like having very strong cultural ties and big families, and we all have very similar types of like family events and values and ties to our family. But as well as that, we kind of all grew up in this I'm going to say limbo kind of space where our parents raise us one way, but then we go to school and we have friends and teachers who also teach us another way of living. And that was very jarring for me and like a lot of the people I know. Finding your own identity within that is really hard. I think people don't realize how it really shapes every decision that you make, and also how the structures around everything, every organization, every workplace that I've been in, every school, it's really, really predominantly focusing on like a white culture or a white kind of society, whereas like this area is so diverse in its multiculturalism, and I just think that the conversation I haven't really had that conversation with a lot of people in terms of making change and creating pathways and creating spaces of understanding where people can discuss these things on a safe and comfortable level. That hasn't really been there. Personally for me, I just feel like I think that's what kind of forced me into doing it myself and doing it with the group, with the Way Over There collective, or what collective. That's really driven me personally, and I think it could be the same for everyone else, is that there's a collective narrative of being torn between, this is my family, this is my cultural ties, I actually enjoy this way of life, and then, enjoying the other side as well. There's pros and cons to both sides, but I just think it's very jarring being in between, and going through that growing up is pretty hard.
And how do you feel, like before you mentioned how you, like when you were younger, felt like you're in limbo constantly. How do you think do you think there's people in your life that were aware of that, or do you think that that was just like you felt that internally?
Yeah, I think, in terms of, it depends on the social realm that you're really talking about, because I feel at school, I kind of did anything to try and fit in and not really stick out, and, put on a facade of being a type of person who, I was just kind of quiet and was observing everyone else to try and figure it out how to be. Not that, my parents they're not very like traditional or, in that sort of way. They're still, considered as like Western or, a bit more forward thinking or something like that. But there's still cultural differences. It's a big shock. For example, like when I was in high school, it was like a massive deal for me to go to a friend's house for a sleepover. And they were just like, why don't you just, just ask, or just, just say that you're going to go, and say that you're going to come straight after school, and just say that you're going to, you're going to do it anyways. And I was just like, you don't understand my life. Like, you don't understand, the repercussions of those things in my family, or you don't understand how important this is for my culture. That's a very small scale kind of concept. But but in terms of my family, I don't know. I think I think maybe some depends on the generation that some of my family members are from, but it's probably easier for some people to understand more than others. But I find it hard, talking about these things to, for example, an older uncle, or a nana or something like that. Just because, like, it's just so different. It's such a different experience, growing up, being born here, growing up here with parents who were born somewhere else, and friends who were born here, and teachers who were born here. It's very conflicting, and it's kind of easier to just not try and rock the boat, just kind of stay doing your own thing and figuring it out yourself. So that's in my experience, that's what I felt.
It's really interesting you talk about the challenges, particularly growing up, because I think there's this element where we all feel like growing up is extremely difficult, but we only really have it from our perspective. And so that's why I'm really interested in when you were talking about your experience, particularly around the sleepovers. Like, these are things that you don't normally kind of understand when you're not going through it yourself. But I guess I'm interested to know those challenges and those barriers and those things that you kind of went through growing up. Are they the same barriers and challenges that you have now? Have they resolved? Are they different? What does it look like now, having sort of moved through that?
Well, I think in terms of how it's shaped me now, definitely it's had an impact. Growing up, everyone in my life has had an impact on me. So I guess any advice that's been given to me growing up, it's all, somewhere. It's all sitting somewhere, and that's where all of my choices and decisions and thought processes come from, I guess. So I guess unlearning some of those ones that aren't as true is important for me now. But I think in terms of, being an adult and working and being in this whole new world and figuring it out is a much different thing. So, for example, like, I have had situations in a workplace where something's happened and I'm not comfortable, and I want to say something, and, it's really bothering me, and it's going a bit against my values, and I just, I need to say something. I feel called to do so, but then I've talked to a family member, and they've, said, you're lucky just to be here. When I came here, I didn't have anything. You have to keep your head down. You have to, you can't just stick out, because then you're the first one to be cut. So in that way, my older family members, they do feel that, that unjust, that unfairness of how we are always going to be the first on the chopping block to go. But those things, they always stay with me. And, like, in those situations, sometimes I'm too scared to say anything because of all those voices saying, like, you're lucky to be here. Like, you shouldn't say anything. Shut your mouth. Don't make a scene. Your job is, it all comes down to now, like, job security. And that's hard, because when something's pressing your values and you want to say something, it's just like this hierarchical thing that you're faced with. And I think I've found that I'm the very bottom of the bottom, and people view me a lot differently. So yeah, I think that's something that I've faced, and how it's kind of carried on to my life now. That's just one sort of thing that I felt that I've dealt with or had faced before. And I can definitely, when I'm looking back and unpacking it, see how those things have carried on from childhood into adulthood.
So, Sol, you were saying before how you've been afraid to speak up when there's been situations that have made you feel uncomfortable. Was there anyone within your workspace that you were able to speak to or could confide in, or was it very much just all internalized and you could only really speak about it, within your own family or friends?
Well, like, I think, in different I've worked at so many different places, and this is, just something that's, systemically is kind of just there. It just seems like at every single job, now that I'm thinking about it, looking back, in a workplace environment or even a study environment at my uni, it just kind of feels like, when you look at it, who is around you in your team or in your class, who is a person of color, who understands your background, that can do something about it or that you can confide in. And when you look around, there's no one. There's no one in that vicinity who you think would understand from your physical point of view, being a person of color and a person of color only in that moment. I know, you can kind of confide in people about all sorts of things, but when it comes to topics about race or, I just think I would, in terms of if we're talking about, say, someone making a sexist comment to you, you wouldn't really feel comfortable going to your male manager and saying, hey, if you didn't really know them or anything like that. So I think it's the same for me. Is if someone says something, a racist comment or something, a microaggression, I have had those things happen to me in a few different places, at uni, at school, in the workplace, and I turn to my team or, my class, and there's kind of no one that looks like me there or no one that represents me. So how can we feel comfortable speaking up? And going beyond that, there's no one in power or leadership or management, who's a person of color, barely. So, I think the real issue is diverse representation at all levels of engagement, at all levels in the workplace, and not just one, not just two, a balanced and mixed amount. I always kind of think it would be absurd to people if, they said, okay, we fix the sexism issue at work, we put one female in this role and everyone else is men, and it just doesn't work like that. So I think that's a real issue for me. I mean, would you feel comfortable talking to someone about something personal if they didn't understand, if they could never understand from a personal level?
Absolutely not. And I feel like, these conversations are so important to have, because I don't think people realize that or cannot comprehend that.
Mm-hmm. It's a systemic thing as well. Like, I've had these conversations so many times, and it's always like, well, that person's just the best for the job. Whoever we hired, they're going to be the best for the job. And I think people don't understand that your version of what's best for the job is conditioned to think a certain way, and to judge people, and subconsciously that your idea of the perfect person is made up of a lot of different things, and until you unpack that and realize that it's biased, and it's prioritizing the same types of people and not giving anyone else a chance or a voice, it's damaging. So I think it's ignorant to say that the best person will be hired for this job based on this, this, and this. And, it really is up to the person hiring and the checklist that's going on and the training that they've had. And I just feel like it should be a necessary thing, just as much as, any other trainings at work, to be doing anti-racism training and really trying to unpack our minds and realize that our choices and our decisions are based on, pre-existing thoughts that maybe shouldn't be there.
It's a really interesting point. I was having a conversation with a close girlfriend of mine recently in regards to diversity in recruitment that you've just mentioned. And it was interesting because there was, and I'll be completely honest, and this is why we're holding this space to have these conversations, and that I did, hear myself say, but, don't you hire based on the right fit for the role? And it was actually in that moment when she called me out and said, yes, however, the people that have the experience to fill those roles may not necessarily have had the opportunities early on to get the experience, to get the education, to have the opportunities to be the right fit for the role. So that's why we need to put the interventions in earlier, to be able to facilitate that and allow for that. And it's not until you actually have these conversations and then are brave enough to go, I have to call myself on that. And I called myself on it, because you don't necessarily realize. And so really interesting in a comment you made earlier that you said you were the lowest of the low. And that's really hard to hear. And that's really hard to hear in that, we really don't want that for you. But I'm interested, what has driven that? Like, where are the failings? Where are the system flaws? What has happened to the point where you feel that you have to say that you are the lowest in the low in this process?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm just going to speak. This is all just personal opinion and personal experience, and I guess this is just what I think. But yeah, I feel, in the situations that I've been in the workplaces, as ever since I was a bit younger as well. When I got my first job when I was 14, I was so excited. I feel like back then, the attitude was always like the young girl, and I was very insecure as well, so I wasn't probably as confident, which is everyone's first job. But then going on from there, I think just the microaggressions, the dismissive attitudes towards women as well, being a female, and then I think just all of the stages that I've been through as well, like when I shaved my hair and I have tattoos, and like people get a look at me, and that turns them off or turns them away from wanting to engage, or that sort of thing. That's in terms of my experience with like just people in general in the street, at train stations, not police officers, PSOs, people who've come into work and have complained about me, and made comments and things like that. And I kind of just didn't really take that to heart as much as time went on. But I think in the workplace, when you feel like you can't really climb your way up, or you can't really grasp any sense of like accessibility into a certain conversation or a certain space, I think it's hard to swallow, like that you're being I don't know. I think it's hard for me to speak on this. I find it really confronting because it's my situation right now. It's how I feel right now. And I just feel like I'm capable of a lot more than a lot of co-workers or managers see. And that this is the same story based on a lot of the friends I have as well, is that it's constantly being overlooked or talked down to, being condescending. It's an interesting thing, and you just feel it. You just have that feeling. I've smiled at co-workers who, are in different teams or different roles, and they just ignore you. And not that that's, I'm taking that to heart kind of thing, but it's just the vibe that you get. And I think it's really interesting because I just know that I'm just worth so much more, and I'm worth actually a conversation, and I can give so much more to this community and to this to life. So yeah, I think it's really interesting talking about it out loud, because it's very personal right now. So So
We appreciate you sharing. And I know I can see that there's some comments coming in from those that are watching. You know, they're really acknowledging the topic and finding it quite interesting. So we know this can be difficult to talk about, but we do appreciate it. Cracking it open and being unafraid to talk about these things. So we do appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, Sol, do you think that because of what you've had to deal with, this has kind of influenced you, or like maybe like pushed you in the direction of being a part of Way Over There? And, you know, how has that influenced everything else from stemming from that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, definitely. I feel like there's just like going back to the representation conversation we were having. I think, you know, if there's no representation there, if there's no spaces for us, if there's no one who kind of wants to hear us, if there's none of that, you know, let's form something great together, and let's work our way inwards, because this area, like we live here. This is our community. This is our area. We all feel very connected to it, and we all definitely feel a sense of ownership over these spaces that we're surrounded by, these areas. And, you know, what's stopping us from going for it, for doing it ourselves and creating it for our people, you know? And it's fair enough that these things haven't come up before. These, for example, a program that Way Over There Collective runs is the Safe Spaces program, where we hold a space for predominantly Black and brown young people, but open to allies coming to come and converse and educate each other and learn and, you know, share and get to know each other, network. There's nothing like that out here. And, you know, if that's not there, which understandably, like I was saying, it isn't, because there's no one from these backgrounds within, you know, for example, council, to be able to build these things up for us. Why not just try and do it ourselves, because it's so needed. You know, we've run we formed during COVID-19, and we've already run 3 very successful Safe Spaces programs where we've had turnouts that we didn't even think were possible online. And it just proves, like, every single person agreed that there's no space out here for us. There's no pre-existing platforms, and there's no, you know, people don't have, like we were saying before, people don't have the previous experiences or whatever. We want to do professional development sessions or workshops, and where is that now for people to access? It feels like, you know, like I was saying, that people who feel the bottom of the bottom or the lowest of the low are being kept there and not given an opportunity to rise up, because, like, the potential is so high for so many communities, for so many people. They're just not given a chance. So we're just creating it. We're creating a network where we all lift each other up. There's no hierarchy. There's no, I think in workplaces it really turns me off, the hierarchical talk, like physically the words, you know, they're on top or they're higher than this person, and oh yeah, that person works under this person. We just don't like that. We want to be this, I don't know, well-rounded ecosystem of, you know, if someone wants to join our community, all right, come in, what do you do? Okay, let's connect you with this person. We're going to do this. What do you want to be involved in this? We'll email you when something comes up. It's very personal. And it's really been working so far. So the safe spaces, I'll just let you guys know in case you know anyone who wants to come along. They are, at the moment, they're online. But next year we're working towards making it a traveling space that goes from community facility to community, like whatever facility that we're doing it at. But within the city of Casey, we've been speaking with some really great staff members and employees from the city of Casey. and also from City of Dandenong, and working with some really great art organisations like CAS, Connections Art Space in Dandenong. Yeah, sorry, just about to yawn. To be able to do the safe spaces in real life, and and just make it as fun and accessible and helpful and open and safe as possible.
To get the change and creating those spaces and connecting the communities and the way out there collective is trying to do, what are some of those additional kind of supporting mechanisms or fundamental changes or kind of conversations that need to happen to kind of really enable this to really succeed?
Are you meaning the way over there collective, what will help us to succeed and to create this ecosystem and help
Yeah,
lift
what is
people up?
the change in society that needs to happen so that initiatives like this can really actually make a systemic difference?
Yeah, well, I think people need to first be open to having a conversation. I think it's a real issue. People need to stop, putting their walls up, and it's this thing where people feel this like attack on them, and the reason is because it's called like white fragility. It's when you realize that your actions and your the way you live your life has somewhat been perpetuating this narrative of always prioritizing a certain community's voice, and that means that another community or other communities, their voices aren't being heard because they're not put on the same level as you. That's just been the way it is, and I guess at the moment it's hard for people to have those conversations because there are barely any people in the workplace or in the class or in the uni or in the organization to be speaking about it, let alone if there's one or two people brave enough to speak about it. It's all, at the moment it's the change or the conversations coming from allies, white allies, and that's great to see, but it needs to be a conversation between the people who have walked in those shoes, who have lived a different life, and it's just how it is. People need to face it. If I came to you and said, I've endured this, I've felt this, I've had this horrible thing happen to me, you would you would actually listen to me and say, okay, what can we do? But a lot of people, when it comes to race or racism or colonialism, that topic, it's very hard for them to change anything because they would have to change the way that they think, and that inconveniences people. So I think that's one important thing, just to come to the table, have a conversation, allow black and brown voices to be heard in your space. Another thing is, I think, bring the mindset that we need to be sharing the space, sharing the microphone, sharing a seat at the table, giving a seat at the table, giving more than one seat at the table. We need to be prioritizing voices that have traditionally been lost and traditionally been shut out. Since white settlers came here, Indigenous voices have always been left out and shut out. That's horrible, and we need to start, somewhere. We need to start by including those voices and really holding everyone accountable for shutting people out for so long. I think that's a really important thing. Just noticing that so many people haven't been at the table, and it's time to just come together and allow those people to speak for once and to be heard, and no one interrupt them. Everyone else's voices have been heard for such a long time. It's now someone else's choice and chance to be able to speak. So.
And it looks like there's a few comments again, sort of around acknowledging the work that does need to be done, in the community to build that inclusivity. And I just wanted to build on what you were saying. Like, what does inclusivity actually look and feel like? Like, how do you identify that something is actually inclusive?
Well, I guess for me, I mean, for everyone, it would I guess, look different, but it's just feeling comfortable in a space and feeling like your voice has the same amount of value as everyone around you and everyone in that space. You know, I really believe that everyone's opinions are important and everyone's input is valid, and, you know, everyone should be made to feel comfortable in a space, but it's usually not like that. There's usually some sort of hierarchy, some sort of form of oppression or this weird power dynamic, and it just doesn't work. It really does push people with, it pushes some people down and then some people float to the top, and it shouldn't be like that. And I guess inclusivity, is if I walk into a space and I don't see anybody who looks like me, but they're making really important decisions and delegating tasks and being the boss of everything, how can I ever imagine that I'd be in that position one day? How can I ever aspire to be that in that role? Or, you know, how can I ever aspire to be in that position when I rarely ever see someone in that position? I think that's really interesting, and that to me is, it sucks, because when you're little, you know, you always look up to someone, and usually you can identify or you can relate to them in some sort of way. When I was little, I don't think there was anyone any characters on TV that looked like me, you know, I didn't know anyone. There was no one really being pushed out there on TV, on the media, in characters, in kids shows, nothing like that who looked like me. So that's pretty sad. And even still to this day, like, there's not too much representation in that space. There should be more for people to aspire to be in the workplace, in uni, in organizations, in anywhere.
And so with way over there, are you hoping that this is the first step for this, like, the representation to occur, especially within your community in particular, and to maybe influence other communities around?
Yeah, I really, we all really, really value prioritizing Black and Brown voices. Which, like you said, everyone has, or like I said, everyone has something important to say, and it's just traditionally other voices that are being prioritized. So I think it's really important to hear people out and to really take life experiences as a valuable thing, because people who have been through, you know, hardships and faced hardships in everyday life, you know, existing between two kind of different worlds, and going to school and having to act one way and then going home and having to act another, and not knowing where you sit in between that. It's really hard, and that's just a basic and surface level of that kind of feeling. So I think we really do want to prioritize those voices and hope to just spread this kind of energy across this area and really branch out, work with other art organizations and organizations in general, just to, you know, even just be there as the voice. If there's no pre-existing voices in those roles, just come in, have a conversation, work with people, collaborate with people to build programs that are accessible and spaces that are diverse and inclusive. And
I guess in closing, I'm really keen on your thoughts around, you know, talking about some of these challenges. If there are people going through this at the moment, like, what advice do you give them? What do you recommend they do for support? Like, where do they start if it's kind of they're in that difficulty right now?
Definitely, like, reach out to our collective, Way Over There collective. There's 5 or 6 of us who work together, and we all have experiences in this to some extent. The topic, the theme, life in contradiction, we all have ties to this narrative somehow. So definitely, like, you can feel free to reach out to us. I think, you know, it's important to look after your mental health. Like, you can see the tagline below, please call Beyond Blue or Lifeline if there's anything ever really serious or pressing that is going on. But I think it's important, you know, if you're going to talk to a therapist or find a therapist at some point, you probably do need to figure out if that person is right for you as well. Because I definitely like have had I had the same therapist for 8 years, and I just stopped seeing her all of a sudden one day because I realized like the entire time I was talking about like cultural upbringing and how that made me feel in school life or in high school life or in work life, and how it's so different that it clashes, and I don't know who I am. I don't want to disappoint my family, and da da da. And the whole time I felt like I was educating her on my culture and my upbringing and my family, rather than actually getting help on my mental health. I think that is why I realized like I'm paying someone to just teach them about my culture, and I should be seeing someone who understands my culture and helps me piece together why I'm feeling like this, why I feel so like displaced and in this limbo state. I definitely think find someone who understands you. But yeah, talk to your peers, talk to your family. They, you know, on some level would understand what it's like if they moved over here from another country, if they were born here and their parents, you know, are from somewhere else, or, you know, any of those types of relationships. Just utilize that and speak with people, because like I think you can learn something off anyone. And even though I disagree with a lot of my older, more traditional thinking uncles and nanas and aunties, I still listen to them. And, you know, a lot of the time I'm eye rolling and I'm like, okay, I don't agree with this, but there are some things that I can pull out of that and really learn from them. And I hear a lot of truth in that. You know, when my nana did say to me, you know, at work, you can't, you know, cause a scene or cause trouble. You're going to, you know, you don't want to lose your job. It really revealed to me like what she probably went through. And that honestly just revealed to me that people have been going through this for so long, and I'm still going through this. So like it needs to stop somewhere. You know, the conversation needs to start. So.
Fantastic. Well, I think I can hear that you might have a little upset one in the background there. It's been a really, yeah. It's been a really fantastic conversation. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. Sarah Jane, is there anything that we want to share before we close out this afternoon, this evening?
So we first would like to thank Sol for her time and speaking upon her experiences. I can't speak for Andi, but I can speak for myself. There's so many things that I haven't thought about, and yeah, it's made me uncomfortable, but I think in a good sense, because it's now making me realize I need to do more. But also, if anyone in the audience tonight, if anything we have spoken about has caused any sort of distress or has uprisen any sort of trauma that you've dealt with in your personal life, please call Beyond Blue hotline 1300 22 4636 or the Lifeline hotline 13 11 14. They're here to support you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I do reiterate Sarah Jane's comments. Like I was sneakily taking notes over to the side here, just some things to kind of start thinking about, you know, to raise in my workplace, you know, and start sort of doing things a little bit differently. So we really appreciate that. And we do appreciate your time. As we sort of mentioned up front, this is a monthly series. So we will be live again next month. Our next show is on the 29th of November, and we will be live again on this channel, Try Chat and Community. Next month, we will be chatting with Jess Nicotina Lee. Jess is also part of the Way Over There collective, and Jess is a local community member, a curator, and a capturer of moments. So we're really looking forward to chatting with Jess and getting her perspective on this topic as well. And I guess just closing out tonight, you know, until we catch up again next month, we just ask everyone, you know, be kind, be understanding, you know, and hold that space, hold the space for others, you know, try and gain that understanding. And, you know, together we can try and make some systemic change that just makes life just that little bit easier. So thank you,
so much.
everybody.
Thank you,
Jane, and thank you, Saleha, so much. It's been such a great opportunity, and I'm really keen to have the conversation. 45 minutes is not enough, but yeah, it's a good start. Thank you, guys.
Wonderful. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.